The new Pope Leo XIV recently found himself in a public spat with President Trump. So who's right? Who got it wrong? Well, Leo and Trump both got something right and something wrong as well. And before we go any further, let me say this up front. If you are in the Trump tribe or the No Kings tribe, then you're going to take a side and demonize the other. That's too easy. It's also not intellectually serious, and it's not challenging at all. Thoughtful people of faith ought to consider all the data, historical, political, and theological, before jumping into the fray. So instead of reaching out of instinct or loyalty, come with me on this ride. Let's actually think this through, something the media largely stopped doing during the Trump presidency. For instance, consider this headline by NPR. Trump's attacks on the popes are unprecedented, religious experts say. What? Some religious experts these are. Look, the papacy is 1,500 years old. Its history is full of conflict between popes and emperors. Sometimes popes won, like Gregory VII humiliating Emperor Henry IV at Canossa. Sometimes emperors won, like Henry IV turning around and driving Gregory VII into exile 7 years later. The Leo-Trump spat is simply modern replay of an old pattern, political power and spiritual authority clashing in public. There's nothing new here. So let's start with Pope Leo, specifically what he got right. After Trump set up Iran, a whole civilization will die tonight, and he said this on Easter of all days, Leo responded that such language was truly unacceptable. And on that point, he was absolutely right. Trump fired back, I'm not a fan of Pope Leo. He should get his act together as Pope. Stop catering to the radical left. Look, a spiritual leader should call out that kind of rhetoric. When someone with immense political and military power starts talking like that to destroy the whole civilization, someone with moral authority needs to step in and say, no, that's not how we talk about human beings. And I would have added, Mr. President, you shouldn't have said, praise be to Allah, either in your Easter speech. And frankly, Leo's response was far better than the truly pathetic response from Franklin Graham, a godly man, yes, and the leader of Samaritan Purse, who dismissed the criticism Trump received for posting an AI-generated image of himself as Jesus by saying, a lot to do about nothing. Yet Graham has publicly scolded Trump for using profanity in speeches, calling it salty language. Really, Mr. Graham? That's it? Trump's profanity bothers me too. And when he does it, especially on Easter Sunday, it makes me think again about his own admission. Quote, I don't think there's anything going to get me into heaven. I really don't. End of a quote. That statement, far more than his salty language, is what makes me wonder whether President Trump truly knows the Lord. Let's get back to Pope Leo. So what did Leo get wrong? Again, what he did standing up to Trump was right. But what he said was not, at least in view of his own church's long-standing just war tradition. Here's what Leo said. Quote, I would invite citizens of all of the countries involved to contact political leaders to work for peace and to reject war always. Reject war always, Leo said. Of course, many on the left who reject anything Trump says or does love that. But if we're going to be honest and if we're going to take Catholic theology seriously, we need to revisit one of the most important Catholic thinkers on public theology. Enter Father John Corley Murray, the Jesuit theologian who died in 1967. The current Archbishop of Washington, Robert McElroy, later revived Murray's thought through the Search for an American Public Theology, calling it, quote, the most compelling and comprehensive foundations for public theology in the United States. In other words, no Catholic can simply ignore Murray. Murray argued that the international common good, which concerned Leo as well, rests on three pillars. 1, freedom from economic misery. 2, the right to participate in political life. 3, protection of right religion, speech, and association, freedom from economic misery, the right to participation in political life, protection of right, religion, speech, and association. By these standards, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary government has long failed its people, long before the reported recent killing of 35,000 protesters. Hillary Clinton, certainly no friend of Trump, said as much in 2011 when she condemned Iran's violent suppression of free expression and human rights with these words.
The Iranian government is once again using its security forces and resorting to violence to prevent the free expression of ideas from their own people, the universal human rights of the Iranian people.
Economically, the regime has driven the nation into collapse. It is reported that half the population lives in absolute poverty. Listen to this report.
The Iranian economy, long plagued by sanctions, mismanagement, and internal corruption, has reached an unprecedented state of collapse. Experts describe the current situation as a freefall, with inflation soaring, the currency depreciating, and basic goods becoming increasingly unaffordable for the average citizen.
This is not merely bad governance. It is a violation of the common good. So what does this have to do with the United States? Murray argued that because of America's predominance in world affairs, its foreign policy must incorporate the international common good. And sometimes, he said, that requires the use of force to repel injustice and aggression directed against smaller nations. This stands in sharp contrast to Leo's reject war always. Murray argued that military force can be morally required to stop a regime's injustice against its own people and its aggression towards smaller nations. In this case, that smaller nation is Israel, vastly smaller than Iran in both land and population. Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons is tied to its former president Ahmad Ahmadinejad's infamous 2005 declaration, Israel must be wiped off the map. This is why world leaders, including Emmanuel Macron, have said no to Iran having nuclear arms. Macron told Congress in 2018,
Iran shall never possess any nuclear weapons. Not now, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, never.
Yet he also rejected war with Iran, preferring negotiation, an approach that has clearly failed since Iran has never stopped developing nuclear weapons. Hillary Clinton, during her 2008 presidential run as a Democrat, evidently mindful of the international common good, took a different stance.
If Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them.
Well, isn't that what President Trump is trying to do? All of this to say, the war with Iran, in spite of Trump's mixed motive, falls within the parameters of Catholic just war theory as articulated by Murray and many before him. This is what Trump got right. What he got wrong, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, was posting an image of himself as Jesus rather than, say, a Red Cross doctor. Please, we're not that gullible. So I pray daily that Iran's Islamic regime will be dismantled so its people can finally speak and worship freely and live better economic life. And I pray that President Trump will stop thinking so highly of himself before God humbles him. And I pray for his salvation as well.